Good morning, everyone. My name is Brona Clark. I'm the marketing director at Kestrel Foods. And InvestNI invited me on today to talk through our relaunch of ActiSnack in relation to health and wellness. So what I want to do, first of all, was just give you a little bit of context around the business that we operate in. The business is Kestrel Foods. Kestrel has been operating in Northern Ireland for 25 years. It's a family-run business, specialising in snacks, chocolate-coated nuts, granola and dried fruit. We have two brands, Forest Feast and ActiSnack, but we also supply private label and food service. We're very much innovation-led, quality-focused. We produce everything in-house. We spend a lot of our time focusing on the product quality and on our innovation and making sure that what we bring to market is very exciting and very different for consumers. We have a lot of global sourcing expertise as well, and we have a strong ethos around ethical trading and sustainable sourcing. We're now operating in about 26 international markets, and we have 20% year-on-year growth. And we've just recently invested 2.8 million in a second site here to facilitate the demand that we've had. The two brands that I mentioned, Forest Feast and ActiSnack, you're probably more familiar with Forest Feast, but both are relevant in the health and wellness sphere, you know, with regards to dried fruit, nuts and snacking. But really, ActiSnack is our sort of pointed health and wellness brand, so to speak, and we have a very defined consumer audience off the back of that. So really today I want to talk you through the journey of how we launched it, talking through each of the critical stages of defining our consumer, getting the insight right, and then really bringing that to market launch. So really this is kind of the typical road to launch that you would come across when you're looking at a market launch. It wasn't as straightforward as this. There was a lot of ups and downs, but essentially the principles behind this was how we got to the journey we got to. First and foremost was defining the market and the consumer insights. So, you know, it was identifying the consumer, their needs, and what the category white space was as well, which was very, very important for us because we weren't going to be first to market with regards to sports nutrition. The next piece was around, I guess, identifying what the priorities were and what we were going to launch with, and really ideating and building the space off the back of that, deciding what we would do now and what we would do next year and what we would do in 3 years' time. The next piece is the critical piece. It was around aligning all the internal resource behind one big organising thought. It was about aligning our agencies and developing an interagency approach so that we could work together on and really come out with the best practice launch plan. The next stage, obviously, go-to-market execution, making sure that we had the packaging right. We were launching a new website, what the communications was going to be for the consumer online and offline, and then taking that to the trade, so making sure that our trade story was spot on. And finally, I mean, we're kind of in this stage at this point where we're reviewing the performance of the launch, but also getting ready for phase 2 development. So we identified 3 big kind of insights behind the fast-paced growth in sports nutrition. First was around the fact that strength has become the new important buzzword within the health industry. You know, go back 4 or 5 years ago, it used to be much more around diet, cutting out fat, cutting out calories. Today, it's much more about building sustainable body mass and body muscle that's going to make your body perform into the future years. The second was that we've seen a huge uptrend in protein. So I guess protein for a lot of people is the shortcut to healthy, and what we've seen off the back of that is a significant amount of NPD launches, but also a huge consumer awareness into what protein does for your body. It's not without saying that within the UK and Irish market that we're actually not very deficient in protein at all, but for a lot of people it just means that, hey, I'm going to eat healthier, and maybe I'm trying to cut out some of the processed products within my diet and focus more on those kind of big macronutrients. And finally, this idea that everybody's trying to get healthy, everybody's trying to get fit. We've seen a huge surge in things like park run. Not so much at the minute, but go back 6 months ago, 8 months ago, everybody was partaking in park run. And that's just, I guess, symbolic of everybody wanting to try and be well and fit for the future. We also knew that, like, thinking ahead, the projection of the market was going to be 2 billion by 2023. So we had to kind of define what we thought were going to be the big areas within that. And for us, it was around this move away from processed food into real food, and real food being real fuel. The second was about a plant-based movement, huge growth in veganism, and people having trust in plant-based protein and not necessarily feeling that they need for that protein to come from meat anymore. I guess we also seen quite a big gap in, I suppose, savoury snacks. A lot of the protein snacks on the market were sweet and not really many savoury options for people who were wanting to cut out some sugar. And finally, this idea that adventure boundaries were being pushed. So, whilst everybody's partaking in park run, 10 years ago, a marathon was a big feat. Nowadays, it's sort of like everybody next door is doing a marathon, and those boundaries are being pushed, and people like that, I guess, idea that they're going to the next level. So I guess very importantly for us when we were looking at the health and wellness consumer was defining which consumer segment we wanted to target. So this is our own consumer segmentation, and what we defined was that we wanted to go after this group called achievers. So achievers are go-getters, and they get up in the morning at 5 before everybody else is up. They'll go for a run. They'll not shout about it. They'll not gloat about it. They're just very self-motivated. They, busy working people, but what they'll do is they'll try and cram in as much exercise and sport as they can whenever they get a chance. So I guess from a bullseye point of view, we identified 2 groups of people, Joe and Jenny, and this was just for us to really bring the audience to life for our agencies and for the retailers as well. So Joe and Jenny are sort of the bullseye, the extreme version of who we're trying to target. But without sort of excluding anybody, it was really important to note that we felt ActiSnacks should be for anyone, from avid runners to weekend cyclists, to weightlifters, to bench pressers, to couch to 5Kers, but they were all united with this need to fuel with real food. So I guess, now that we defined the audience, what we needed to define was what we wanted to be and what our products were going to be. And really the products themselves were born out of the insight that it should be real food fueling our bodies, not supplements, not powders, not substitutes, and that it would be full of real food credentials, no sugar substitutes, no sweeteners, artificial ingredients or flavors. And it was really developed with like-minded nutritionists, adventure athletes, and healthy active consumers. So we spoke to all those 3 subsegments to try and define what we were going to do. And this kind of coupled with the growth in plant-based snacks basically led us to launch trail mixes. So I guess, coming down to what the product was, we needed to set some parameters in place based on the consumer insight we'd had. And that was around, making sure that they were 100% natural, making sure they were clean ingredients, making sure that they were gluten-free and vegan where possible. They weren't critical elements, but we did see that, it was very relevant to a big subset of our audience. But we also wanted to make sure that they were nutritionally really sound versus a lot of the other protein snacks on the market. So high in protein, high in fiber, potassium, magnesium, iron, all these nutritional elements are critical for an athlete's performance. So things like potassium replaces salt after exercise, iron helps to reduce fatigue, so it helps to pump the blood around the body. So these were all really critical elements for us whenever we were developing the products. And we developed some low sugar products as well. So whilst athletes are always trying to sort of build up their energy levels, there is some people who are looking for more of a low sugar option. So I guess, to sort of summarize everything up, I just want to play a quick video to talk you through the journey that we took.
At ActiSnack, we've made it our mission to be the next generation of sports nutrition. So that starts with real athletes and real food. Real food, nutritionally tailored and plant-based, so it naturally fuels and recovers your body to go further, faster. Our own active tribe of runners, cyclists, climbers and health fanatics are passionate about fueling well to perform well. And we noticed how hard it was to find proper snacks that weren't loaded with artificial sweeteners or pseudo-health credentials. We talked to other athletes and they said the same. So, we began the journey of creating the right type of fuel with the right type of snacks. Partnering with the Sports Institute and Adventure Athletes to build the range, we then rigorously tested the final products to make sure they hit the mark. Launching with a range of trail mixes, from high energy to low sugar keto snacks. Each one packs a punch of protein to build lean muscle mass, as well as magnesium, potassium and iron to fight muscle fatigue. So you get the right nutrients to push yourself further, faster. We handcraft everything, always baking, never frying, to lock in the goodness. Our promise is we only use natural ingredients, categorically nothing artificial, and definitely no gut-busting sweeteners. And we're as much about great taste as we are about great fuel. We're launching with sampling at key sports events and by powering our ambassadors to take on world-class, record-breaking challenges. We've also created eye-catching point of sale, a new website and social media channels. We make snacks for trailblazers, people who wake up early or stay late to work out, the ones that carve out their own path, who push their potential, and who are in constant pursuit to achieve their goals. We know you put everything in to get the most out, so we won't stop until we bring you the best snacks out there. This is only the beginning.
So hopefully you can see through that video that we had quite a long journey, but it was very enjoyable as we went through the process. And the main reason it was so successful for us was because we got true insight from athletes, we got true insight from Couch to 5Kers, we had nutritionists on board, and I guess ourselves, we're a very sort of tight-knit team within Kestrel, but we're also a real passionate group of adventure people. So, between running and cycling, we're always up to something, and that really helped us form the insight as well in terms of what we launched. So for us, phase one was about launching trail mixes. I guess, nuts and dried fruit are inherently healthy. We brought out natural mixes, but we also brought out energy mixes. So salted dark chocolate, peanut butter, but the crux of them was only using natural ingredients. And then we brought out some individual packs as well for people who were on the go. So again, energy mixes. And this time we tapped into a new trend, which was around keto. So for anybody who's not familiar with keto, keto is a low carb way of eating or a low sugar way of eating. And whilst it's not relevant to all athletes or all sports people, it is relevant to people who are trying to maybe cut out some sugar and build up their protein and their fat content instead. And I guess, what we did here was we tapped into things like Google Trends, and we tapped into Mintel reports and plenty of other insight reports that showed us the growth. And what we could see was that keto was actually tracking above gluten-free, which was a good sign given the size of the gluten-free market. So we knew we were onto something there with the keto products. And we could see also from some insight charts that it was particularly relevant with young audience, so with the Gen Zs. So we could see that this was probably a trend that is going to stay around for a long while. And to date, our keto snacks have been the highest performing products that we have brought to market. So all this targeting was quite important as well for our go-to-market campaign. So I guess, from our support point of view, we have social, we have paid for advertising. We tap into some ambassadors that we have. So we've got Lorna Cook there, who is a nutritionist with Sports Institute Northern Ireland. We've also Noel Hanna, who's a renowned Northern Ireland mountain climber and adventurer. With Paul Swale, who's a mountaineer. So we've got 6 or 8 ambassadors on board who help us do a job in terms of understanding what they are looking for, but also helping us spread the message around the brand and the nutritional aspects. But we do try to target our messaging to the different health and wellness mindsets. So along here on the right hand side, you can see there are more mainstream messages, and on the left hand side, more mainstream messages, and on the right hand side, we've got more keto orientated messages for our target audience. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions from anyone in the audience.